Captain Kalen Vance stood at the bridge of the USS Odyssey, hands clasped firmly behind his back as he gazed out at the swirling nebula before them. The vessel had been navigating this uncharted region of space for 3 weeks now, following ancient signal patterns that had baffled xenolinguists for decades. Vance's weathered face remained impassive, but his mind was churning with calculations and contingencies. 20 years of deep space exploration had taught him to maintain composure regardless of circumstances, a trait that had earned him this command and the grudging respect of his crew. "Captain, our guest is requesting access to the primary signal array again," Lieutenant Commander Rourke announced from his station, making little effort to hide his disapproval. "That's the 3rd time today." Vance turned slightly, acknowledging his executive officer with a measured nod. "Grant the access, Rourke. The Xylosian is here precisely for her expertise with these signals. With all due respect, sir, we know next to nothing about her species. The security protocols have been followed to the letter," Vance interjected calmly. "The array access is monitored and isolated from critical systems. Your concerns are noted, Commander, but my decision stands." Rourke's jaw tightened, but he complied, turning back to his console. Vance understood the officer's caution. It was, after all, partly why he'd selected Rourke as his XO. But the mission parameters were clear: establish communication and evaluate potential alliance with previously unknown species, starting with their enigmatic language expert, who called herself Lyra. Speaking of whom, the bridge doors parted with a soft hiss, and an unremarkable figure entered. Lyra moved with deliberate steps, her form obscured by a simple gray cloak that revealed little of her actual physique. Her face, what little could be seen of it, possessed indistinct features that seemed to shift subtly when not directly observed. The effect was disconcerting, not threatening, but undeniably alien in a way that put humans on edge. "Captain Vance," she spoke, her voice curiously flat and without inflection. "I've discovered a pattern within the ancient signals. They appear to function as navigational markers rather than simple communication, with embedded quantum resonance signatures that may interact with specific space-time coordinates." Several bridge officers exchanged glances, a mixture of skepticism and unease evident in their expressions. Vance had noticed how the crew maintained a polite but unmistakable distance from their Xylosian guest. Her bland appearance and monotone voice made meaningful connection difficult, and humans, for all their progress, still responded primarily to emotional cues. Could these interactions pose any danger to the Odyssey? Vance asked directly, respecting Lyra's apparent preference for straightforward communication. "Unknown. The probability exists. I require additional access to calibrate detection equipment to monitor potential resonance effects as we proceed deeper into the signal field." Commander Rourke made a small, disapproving sound. "Captain, may I remind you that we're already operating beyond standard exploration parameters. Perhaps we should analyze this data more thoroughly before proceeding." Vance considered his options. Starfleet's directive was to push boundaries, but not foolishly. Yet Lyra's analyses had proven remarkably accurate thus far, identifying patterns in the ancient signals that had eluded their best specialists for years. "Prepare a secure workstation in astrometrics," Vance decided. "I'll oversee the process personally." Lyra inclined her head in what might have been gratitude. "Efficiency is appreciated, Captain." Hours later, Vance watched Lyra work in the astrometrics lab, her movements precise as her fingers danced across holographic interfaces. Despite her unremarkable appearance, there was something compelling about her methodical approach, the way she processed vast amounts of data with apparent ease. "These signal patterns," Vance observed, pointing to a cluster of light pulses on the display. "They seem to intensify near that dark matter concentration ahead." "Correct." Lyra adjusted several parameters, enhancing the visualization. The ancient signals utilized dark matter fluctuations as amplification nodes. Ingenious design. Efficient transmission across vast distances. Vance smiled slightly. "You sound almost admiring." "Observation of excellence is logical, regardless of origin," Lyra replied, her monotone voice betraying nothing. Yet Vance sensed something beneath the surface, a curiosity, perhaps, or intellectual appreciation that her bland exterior concealed. Their work was interrupted by the ship-wide alert system. Red warning lights pulsed as Commander Rorick's voice came through the comm system. Captain to the bridge. We're experiencing system fluctuations across all decks. Vance and Lyra arrive on the bridge to find organized chaos. Officers moved with urgent purpose between stations as displays flickered erratically. Report, Vance commanded, taking his chair. It started 3 minutes ago, Rorick explained tensely. Navigation systems began experiencing interference, then communications. Now it's spreading to life support regulators. We've isolated critical systems, but the source appears to be external, some kind of resonance effect coinciding with our entry into this sector. The ancient signals, Lyra stated, moving to a science station without waiting for permission. They're creating a quantum interference field. Your vessel's technology is susceptible. Can we reverse course? Vance asked his helmsman. Negative, sir. Navigation is completely compromised. We're effectively blind. Rorick stepped closer to Vance, lowering his voice. Sir, we need to initiate emergency protocols. Power down all non-essential systems and deploy emergency beacons. That would leave us vulnerable for weeks before any assistance could arrive, Vance countered. I can stabilize the systems, Lyra announced, looking up from her console. All eyes turned to her. The interference pattern can be neutralized by establishing a counter-resonance directly with the source. What exactly does that entail? Vance asked. I would need to interact directly with the signal source through your communication array. The process would require temporarily bypassing several security protocols. The bridge fell silent. Rorick was the first to speak. Absolutely not. This could be exactly what she's been waiting for. Complete access to our systems. Vance studied Lyra carefully. Her plain features revealed nothing. Her body language was neutral. Only her continued work at the console, efficiently analyzing the increasingly dangerous situation, provided any insight into her character. What happens if we do nothing? Vance asked. System degradation will continue, Lyra replied matter-of-factly. Life support will fail within approximately 7 hours. The resonance will eventually affect structural integrity fields. Sir, Rorick pressed, we don't know anything about how she would interact with these signals. For all we know, she could be responsible for this situation in the first place. Vance stood, silencing further debate with a raised hand. The ship shuddered beneath them as another system faltered. He had built his career on assessing people, looking beyond appearances to the character beneath. Lyra had consistently demonstrated exceptional analytical abilities, had shared valuable insights, and had never once requested access beyond what was necessary for her stated purposes. Prepare the communications array for Lyra's procedure, he ordered finally. Commander Rorick, establish a dedicated security team to monitor the process, but they're not to interfere unless I give the direct order. Rorick's expression hardened. Captain, I must formally register my objection to this course of action. So noted, Commander. Now, carry out your orders. The next hour was tense as Lyra interfaced with the Odyssey's communication systems. Vance observed from a short distance, noting how her usually methodical movements became almost fluid as she worked, creating complex command sequences faster than he could follow. The ship's shuddering intensified momentarily, then abruptly ceased. One by one, the flickering system stabilized. Relief was palpable on the bridge as officers reported systems returning to normal function. Status report, Vance called out. All systems returning to nominal parameters. Captain, the operations officer confirmed. Whatever she did, it worked. Not only stabilized, Lyra added, still focused on her console, but I've isolated the specific quantum signature of the signal source. This data will prove valuable for further exploration and potential communication. Vance approached her workstation. Well done. You've quite possibly saved this ship and everyone aboard. Logic dictated the most efficient solution. she replied without inflection. Then, almost as an afterthought, she added, I would like to discuss these findings with you privately, Captain. There are implications worth considering. Later, in the captain's ready room, Vance poured himself a small measure of bourbon, an old Earth tradition after a crisis averted. He offered a glass to Lyra, who declined with a simple gesture. Your quick thinking prevented a disaster today, Vance acknowledged. I'm grateful. Lyra stood near the viewport, the stars casting faint light across her indistinct features. For a long moment, she remained silent, as if contemplating something of great importance. Captain Vance, she finally said, her voice suddenly different, richer somehow, with subtle harmonics that hadn't been present before. I have come to a significant decision regarding our continued association. Vance set down his glass, sensing a shift in the atmosphere. I'm listening. Lyra turned fully toward him, her posture straightening. You've passed my test, human. Now witness my true form. Before Vance could respond, the simple cloak surrounding Lyra began to dissolve, not falling away, but rather seeming to evaporate into particles of light. The indistinct, forgettable features of her face blurred and then dispersed, revealing what lay beneath. Where the unremarkable figure had stood moments before, there now hovered a being of pure luminescence. Lyra's true form was elegant and complex, a crystalline core surrounded by intricate, flowing tendrils of energy in colors that seemed to shift between spectrums. The effect wasn't merely visual, but carried a harmonious resonance that Vance felt as much as saw, a pattern that suggested profound intelligence and consciousness beyond human experience. My God, Vance whispered, instinctively stepping back before regaining his composure. We present ourselves this way only to those who have demonstrated the capacity to see beyond physical form. Lyra's voice came not as sound, but as a harmonic resonance that Vance somehow understood perfectly. Each word carried emotional depth and nuance that her previous monotone had entirely lacked. The shell I wore was a consciousness construct we Xylosians use for initial contact. Vance's mind raced to process what he was witnessing, his practical nature already analyzing implications even as he marveled at the revelation. A test, to see if we would judge you by appearance or by actions and character. Precisely. The light patterns within Lyra's form shifted in what Vance somehow recognized as approval. Previous encounters with other species have taught us caution. When first presented with our true form, many react with fear or greed, seeing us as either threats to eliminate or resources to exploit. We developed the construct as protection and as assessment tool. And I pass by trusting your abilities despite your deliberately unremarkable appearance, Vance concluded. You recognize value beyond surface perception. You defended my role against skepticism. Most significantly, you trusted me with your ship and crew when crisis demanded faith. The crystalline core at Lyra's center pulsed gently. These actions demonstrate qualities compatible with meaningful exchange between our peoples. Vance found himself smiling. I've always believed character reveals itself through actions, not appearances. Though I admit, had you appeared like this from the beginning, it would have been distracting. A cascade of harmonics that Vance interpreted as laughter emanated from Lyra. Indeed, your species is particularly visual in its assessments, but you have demonstrated capacity for deeper perception. The ready room door chimed before sliding open to admit Commander Rorik, who froze mid-step, his eyes widening at the luminescent being hovering beside his captain. What the hell? Rorik's hand instinctively moved toward his sidearm before Vance's sharp command stopped him. Stand down, Commander. Captain. Rorik's gaze darted between Vance and the radiant entity, confusion and alarm evident in his expression. It's still Lyra, Vance explained calmly. This is her true form, the Xylosian we've been working with these past weeks. Rorik's hand remained near his weapon. Sir, with all due respect, why are we only seeing this now? What else has she been hiding? A fair question, Vance acknowledged, turning to Lyra. Perhaps you should explain to the commander what you've just told me. Over the next several hours, the revelation of Lyra's true nature spread throughout the Odyssey. Crew reactions ranged from awestruck fascination to deep suspicion. Vance called a general briefing, allowing Lyra to explain the cultural and security reasons behind the Xylosian practice of initial contact through consciousness constructs. While many crew members accepted the explanation, others, particularly those in security divisions, remained wary. Commander Rorik led this latter group, maintaining professional behavior but clearly uncomfortable with the new development. "Captain, a word in private," he requested after the general briefing concluded. In Vance's ready room, Rorik didn't mince words. "Sir, regardless of her explanations, the fact remains that this being has been deliberately deceiving us from the start. Her capabilities are clearly far beyond what we initially understood. This represents a significant security concern." Vance considered his Exos perspective. "Your caution is noted, Commander. But consider our mission directives to establish contact with new species and evaluate potential alliances. We've just been given an extraordinary opportunity to do exactly that, with a civilization clearly more advanced than our own." "Advanced, yes, and potentially dangerous," Roar countered. "We have no idea what other capabilities she might be concealing, which is precisely why we maintain diplomatic engagement," Vance replied firmly. "Fear is a poor foundation for policy, Commander. Continue security protocols as established, but I expect all crew to treat our guest with appropriate respect." The days that followed brought a transformation in ship operations. Lyra, no longer constrained by her limited construct, revealed extensive knowledge of spatial phenomena and advanced theoretics that fascinated the Odyssey's scientific personnel. Vance spent considerable time with her, learning about Xylosian culture, a civilization of energy beings who existed primarily in higher dimensional states, with profound philosophical traditions centered around consciousness, perception, and harmony. "Your people navigate primarily through physical space," Lyra explained during one such conversation, her luminous form casting gentle patterns across the observation lounge. "Mine experience multiple dimensional states simultaneously. Yet despite these differences, I find remarkable similarities in our ethical frameworks." "How so?" Vance asked, genuinely intrigued. "The concept of respecting sentient autonomy while balancing collective welfare. The recognition that diversity strengthens rather than weakens social structures. The understanding that knowledge brings responsibility." Her energy tendrils formed intricate patterns that somehow conveyed thoughtfulness. "These principles transcend biological form." Vance nodded, struck by how comfortable he'd become in her presence. What had initially seemed alien now felt simply different, remarkable, but no longer unsettling. "I've always believed that intelligence, wherever it evolves, eventually arrives at similar ethical conclusions. The universe has certain lessons it teaches any being capable of reflection." An insightful observation. Lyra's harmonics conveyed appreciation. "This is why you passed our test, Captain. You possess the capacity to recognize kinship across profound difference." Not everyone shared Vance's growing rapport with the Xylosian. Commander Rorik maintained professional distance, while some crew members developed almost reverential attitudes toward Lyra, seeking her out with questions that went far beyond mission parameters. Others whispered concerns about what her presence might mean for humanity's position in the galactic order. Vance had just finished addressing some of these concerns with his senior staff when an urgent communication arrived from Starfleet Command. "Captain, we've received orders to divert course," the communications officer reported. "We're to rendezvous with the Consolidated Military Coalition Fleet in the Helios sector. Priority code Alpha." Vance frowned. The CMC was ostensibly an allied military organization, but their aggressive expansion policies had caused tension in recent years. "Acknowledged. Set course and inform command we'll arrive within 72 hours. Later, reviewing the full orders in private, Vance's concern deepened. The communication contained a specific request, almost a demand, that the Xylosian representative be made available for security consultation upon arrival. No further explanation was provided, but the implication was clear. Someone had learned about Lyra's true nature and capabilities. "Commander Rorik," Vance called over the intercom. "Report to my ready room immediately." When Rorik arrived, Vance wasted no time. "Did you file an unofficial report about Lyra to anyone outside the ship's command structure?" Rorik stiffened. "Sir, I submitted a security assessment to Admiral Tarvis at Fleet Intelligence. It's standard protocol when encountering previously unknown capabilities that might affect broader security concerns. Without consulting me first?" Vance's voice remained level, but cold. "With respect, Captain, my oath includes responsibilities to the broader service, not just to this vessel," Rorik replied, unapologetic. "I would have informed you once I received acknowledgement. And now the CMC is specifically requesting access to Lyra." Vance stood, facing his executive officer directly. "Do you understand what you've potentially initiated? The CMC doesn't consult with unique beings, Commander. They assess, categorize, and if possible, weaponize. Sir, if the Xylosians possess capabilities that could protect human interests, this isn't about protection," Vance cut him off. "This is about Admiral Crane seeing something he can use. I've served with the man. He views everything and everyone as either an asset or a threat, with nothing in between." Rorik's expression hardened. "With respect, sir, perhaps that perspective has merit when dealing with beings of unknown power and motivation. The Xylosians concealed their true nature from us. What else might they be concealing?" The question hung in the air between them, encapsulating their fundamental disagreement. Vance dismissed his XO with instructions to maintain standard operations until their rendezvous, then called Lyra to his ready room to explain the situation. Her reaction was calm but resolute. "I cannot submit to examination or exploitation by your military coalition, Captain. This would violate fundamental principles of my culture and potentially endanger both our peoples." "Understand," Vance assured her, "and I have no intention of simply handing you over. But we need to prepare for a difficult diplomatic situation." The rendezvous with the CMC fleet occurred precisely on schedule. 5 warships arranged in formation around the imposing flagship Indomitable. Admiral Crane wasted no time with pleasantries, requesting immediate transport to the Odyssey along with his security detail. Vance received them in the formal conference room, maintaining all proper protocols while inwardly preparing for confrontation. Admiral Crane was a compact, severe man with calculating eyes and a reputation for ruthless efficiency. His record included brilliant tactical victories, but also controversial decisions regarding non-human civilizations encountered during CMC's rapid expansion. "Captain Vance," Crane began after minimal greetings, "I'll come directly to the point. Your vessel has made contact with an energy-based life form of significant technological advancement. CMC intelligence assesses potential applications for defense technologies that could protect human interests across multiple sectors. The Xylosian representative, Lyra, is a diplomatic guest aboard this vessel," Vance replied evenly. "Any discussion of applications would require her willing participation." Crane's thin smile didn't reach his eyes. "Of course, I'm simply requesting the opportunity to present our proposal directly. Certainly, a being of such advanced nature would understand the practical necessities of interspecies relations. Admiral, I should clarify that Lyra has already expressed reservations about. I'm not interested in second-hand reports of her position, Captain," Crane interrupted. "I have authorization from the Joint Chiefs to establish direct protocols for enhanced cooperation. This goes beyond your exploratory mandate." The conference room door opened, and Lyra entered, her luminescent form immediately drawing all attention. Crane's security detail tensed visibly, hands moving subtly toward weapons. "Admiral Crane," her harmonic voice resonated through the room. "I've monitored your arrival and preliminary discussion. To avoid misunderstanding, I will communicate directly." Crane recovered quickly from his initial surprise. his expression shifting to intense interest as he studied her form. Fascinating. Our reports hardly did justice to your actual manifestation. He stepped forward, ignoring how his security team edged protectively closer. On behalf of the coalition, I extend formal greetings and an invitation to discuss mutual security arrangements that could benefit both our peoples. I am aware of CMC operational doctrine, Admiral, Lyra responded, her harmonics carrying a new note that Vance recognized as caution. Your organization categorizes all encountered species according to potential military utility. This approach is incompatible with Xylosian principles of interaction. Crane's expression hardened slightly. With respect, your assessment of our doctrine is oversimplified. We live in a complex galaxy with genuine threats. Cooperation between advanced civilizations is not merely beneficial but necessary. Cooperation requires mutual respect and shared purpose, Lyra countered. Your communication with your superiors before boarding this vessel explicitly discussed containment protocols and capability extraction. These are not terms of respect. Crane shot a sharp glance at Vance. Your guest appears to have access to secure communications. Captain, that's a significant breach of protocol. Xylosians perceive energy patterns across multiple spectrums, Vance explained calmly, including, apparently, communication bands. Perhaps that underscores the importance of approaching this interaction with complete transparency. The Admiral's jaw tightened momentarily before he regained his diplomatic veneer. Transparency, then. The Coalition has encountered 3 hostile, non-human civilizations in the past year alone. Our expansion has revealed threats that most Federation citizens remain blissfully unaware of. Advanced defensive capabilities are not merely desirable, but essential for human survival. And you see me as a source of such capabilities, Lyra stated. I see potential for mutual benefit. Your people clearly possess technological understanding far beyond our own. We offer alliance, protection, and dedicated research facilities to explore applications that could safeguard multiple civilizations, not just humanity. Vance recognized the shift in Crane's approach, appealing to broader principles while still pursuing his original objective. It was skillful manipulation, but Lyra seemed unpersuaded. Admiral, she responded, the Xylosian Collective has observed your coalition's approach to alliance with other species. The Meridian settlement was classified as a security risk and placed under military authority despite their peaceful intentions. The Galatian researchers who refused weapons development were detained indefinitely under your Interspecies Security Act. Crane's expression darkened. Those situations were complex, with factors you couldn't possibly understand from limited intelligence gathering. Perhaps, Lyra acknowledged, but they establish a pattern that makes voluntary cooperation impossible. I must decline your invitation. I'm afraid it isn't quite that simple. Crane's tone shifted, growing harder. Captain Vance, I'm invoking Emergency Order 197B. The Xylosian representative is to be transferred to Coalition custody for comprehensive security assessment. This vessel will provide full escort to Coalition headquarters. Vance stepped forward. That order applies only to confirmed security threats, Admiral. It cannot be used for compulsory research participation. The determination of threat status falls under my authority in this sector, Crane countered. A being capable of accessing secured communications and manipulating ship systems, as I understand occurred during your recent crisis, clearly qualifies for assessment. I've made my report on that incident available to command, Vance replied. Lyra's actions saved this vessel and crew. So, she demonstrated capabilities that could disable Starship systems, Crane noted with grim satisfaction. You've made my case for me, Captain. The tension in the room was palpable as security personnel from both commands subtly shifted positions. Vance maintained his outward calm while calculating options, none of them good. Direct defiance of Crane's order would constitute mutiny under Coalition Federation joint protocols, but surrendering Lyra violated every principle of diplomatic protection. Admiral, Vance said carefully, I request 12 hours to consult with Starfleet Command regarding jurisdiction in this matter. The Xylosians are a newly contacted species with potential for formal diplomatic recognition. There are procedures. Denied. Crane cut him off. My orders grant time-sensitive discretionary authority. Commander Rorik, he turned to Vance's XO, who had remained silent throughout the exchange. As executive officer, you are directed to implement the transfer order if your captain refuses. All eyes turned to Rorik, whose face revealed his internal conflict. His career-long adherence to chain of command warred visibly with his assessment of the situation before him. Sir, he finally addressed Vance rather than Crane. I believe we should seek clarification from command before proceeding with any transfer. The diplomatic implications alone warrant consultation with higher authorities. Crane's expression darkened further. This is bordering on insubordination, Commander. The security of multiple human settlements could depend on the technologies we might develop from studying this entity. That's precisely why we must proceed correctly, Vance interjected, seizing the opening Rorik had provided. Rushing this process could damage not only our relationship with the Xylosians, but potentially with other advanced species watching how we conduct ourselves. I'm not interested in philosophical debates about first contact protocols, Crane snapped. I have my orders, and this discussion is finished. He turned to his security team. Prepare to escort the Xylosian to our shuttle. Use dampening fields if necessary. That would be unwise. Lyra's harmonics carried a new resonance that made everyone in the room pause. Her luminescent form seemed to intensify, patterns flowing more rapidly through her energy tendrils. I'm not simply an individual, but a connected node of a larger consciousness. Attempting to contain or transport me against my will would trigger defensive protocols beyond your capacity to manage. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Crane's features. Is that a threat? Merely factual information you should consider before proceeding, Lyra replied. The Xylosian collective values peaceful interaction, but is not defenseless. Captain Vance earned trust through respect and ethical conduct. You seek to command through force and legal manipulation. These approaches yield different outcomes. Crane hesitated, clearly reassessing the situation. Vance recognized his opportunity. Admiral, I propose a compromise. The Odyssey will proceed to Starbase 17, where representatives from both Starfleet Command and Coalition Headquarters can jointly meet with Lyra in neutral territory. All relevant protocols can be observed while respecting her autonomy as a diplomatic representative. Before Crane could respond, the ship's alert system activated. Bridge to Captain, came the urgent voice of the duty officer. Sir, we're detecting multiple vessels approaching at high warp. Configuration matches Coalition heavy cruisers, but they're not responding to identification requests. Crane tapped his communicator. Indomitable report. Admiral, came the response. Vice Admiral Terrence has arrived with the Third Fleet. He's requesting your immediate return and, Sir, he's invoking command over Site Protocol 9. The color drained from Crane's face. Protocol 9 was used only when a commanding officer was suspected of exceeding authority or acting contrary to Coalition interests. It effectively placed him under temporary suspension, pending review. It seems, Vance observed carefully, that your superiors have some questions about your approach here, Admiral. Crane's jaw worked silently for a moment before he regained his composure. This isn't over, Captain. The security implications remain valid regardless of procedural disagreements. He turned to his security team. We're returning to the Indomitable. After Crane's departure, the conference room fell silent. Commander Rorik was the first to speak. Captain, I need to acknowledge my role in this situation. My report to intelligence was a mistake. I allowed my caution to override my judgment. Vance studied his XO thoughtfully. Your concerns weren't entirely without merit, Commander. But methods matter as much as motives. Remember that. What happens now? Rorik asked, looking between Vance and Lyra. Now, Vance said, we continue our mission as originally defined, exploring unknown regions and establishing peaceful contact where possible. He turned to Lyra. though perhaps with a deeper understanding of what that truly means. The crystalline core at Lyra's center pulsed with warm light. This encounter has been instructive. Admiral Crane represents an approach to difference rooted in fear and control, one we've encountered throughout our history. But you and your crew, Captain, even those who question my presence, ultimately chose principles over expedience. Not all humans would have made the same choice, Vance admitted, which is precisely why the choice matters. Lyra's harmonics conveyed what Vance now recognized as warmth. Connection between different forms of consciousness is never guaranteed. It must be earned through actions that demonstrate one's true nature. In the days that followed, the Odyssey received formal notification that Admiral Crane had been reassigned pending review of his conduct. Vice Admiral Terrence, a more diplomatically minded officer, initiated proper protocols for potential alliance discussions with the Xylosians, with Captain Vance designated as the primary human liaison due to his demonstrated capacity for cross-species understanding. The ship resumed its original mission, continuing to follow the ancient signal patterns deeper into uncharted space. Crew dynamics evolved as well. The initial wariness toward Lyra gradually transformed into genuine collaboration as her knowledge and perspective proved increasingly valuable to their exploration. One evening, Vance found Lyra in the observation lounge, her luminescent form seeming to blend with the starlight streaming through the viewport. The next signal cluster appears to lead toward a singularity boundary, she noted as he joined her. An interesting choice for a navigation marker. Interesting or concerning? Vance asked with a slight smile. Both, perhaps. The universe rarely separates wonder from risk. Her energy patterns shifted in what Vance had come to recognize as thoughtful contemplation. Your defense of my autonomy has created significant opportunities for both our peoples, Captain. The Xylosian Collective has authorized me to share technologies that may assist your exploration efforts. Not weapons, but advances in propulsion and sensory capabilities. I appreciate that, though it wasn't why I took the stand I did. I know, Lyra's harmonics carried a note of affection, which is precisely why the offer is being made. Intentions matter to us above all else. Vance considered this. Your test, presenting as unremarkable to see who would value substance over appearance. It reflects something fundamental about your culture, doesn't it? Yes. Xylosians exist primarily as patterns of energy and consciousness. Form is fluid, temporary. Only the core patterns that comprise our true nature remain constant. Her luminescence pulsed gently. We learned long ago that those who fixate on external manifestations rarely comprehend the essential. A lesson humanity continues to struggle with, Vance acknowledged. Though I'd like to think we're making progress. You are, Lyra affirmed. Individuals like yourself demonstrate the capacity. Others, like Crayon, remain trapped in older patterns of thought. The tension between these approaches drives your species' evolution, just as similar tensions once shaped ours. Vance turned to face her directly. Where do we go from here, Lyra? Not just the Odyssey's mission, but this connection between our peoples. That remains to be written. Her voice resonated with possibilities. But it begins with recognition, seeing beyond surface appearances to the true nature within. You passed that test, Captain. Now we build upon that foundation, step by step, exploring not just the physical universe around us, but the potential connections between profoundly different forms of consciousness. I look forward to that exploration, Vance said sincerely. As the Odyssey continued its journey into uncharted space, the luminescent being and the human captain stood side by side, watching the stars stream past, different in almost every conceivable way, yet connected by a shared understanding that transcended physical form. Their journey had only just begun, but the first and most crucial step had already been taken, seeing beyond the surface to recognize the true nature that lies within.